good evening and welcome to the first part of a week-long special featuring BriSCA Formula 1 superstar Mat Newson. Tonight we will have an in-depth chat with Mat covering all things stock cars. Tomorrow night onwards we will bring you a virtual Newson workshop tour focusing on some of the cars that Mat has built or refurbished over the close season. As part of those episodes we will also have a quick catch-up with the drivers of those cars. Mat, thank you very much for doing this tonight on what is Easter Sunday. Have you had a chance to eat many Easter eggs today?
No, not really. No, I'm not a chocolate man too much, but no, it's been a really nice day here, to be fair. Been out with the kids, took them down the stream and that, had a little play, and yeah, been a good day.
Good, good. And I guess my first question has to be, have you found a new hobby in amateur filmmaking? The stuff you've sent us so far for the virtual workshop is always very good. Obviously, that's what I'm referring to with that particular question.
Yeah, to be fair, it was something obviously I wanted to do for the people that I'd done the cars and that for, and yeah, it was. Don't get me wrong, you're all going to get a bit of an insight as to what my workshop and what my place looked like. But no, it's been all right, to be fair.
Good, brilliant, thank you. Okay, right, let's make a start. So we have spoken prior to tonight in preparation for the interview, and I was genuinely surprised by the sheer number of cars that you've either built or refurbished over the winter. Has it been your busiest to date? And I guess it does feel like there's a real resurgence in numbers in Formula One this year.
Yeah, to be quite honest, I was quite worried with not a lot of racing in 2020 that it could have actually been a very quiet winter, because generally that is what I do most of the time now is build stock cars. But the Bradford thing, I would say, as a majority of the work, a lot of people have been ordering shale cars. A lot of what I would class as old-time drivers are wanting to come back. And yes, it has been the busiest winter ever. And it's the same old thing. I'm doing theirs. I was going to do myself a car. Guess what? Theirs is done. Mine's not ready. It's the same sort of story this year.
Yeah. You have to keep your customers happy, though.
Yeah, to be fair, at the end of the day, people go to work, don't they, to make a living. To me, that's what I do. I have to do customers' cars to make a living. Unfortunately, my own just doesn't get done. It's as simple as that.
We'll come back to that in a second. We'll come back to those in a minute. And I guess it's quite common these days for drivers to have cars built for them or to kind of send them to people like you to have them refurbished. And that seems like a real shift in the sport over, say, the last 20 years or so. Why do you think that is?
I don't know, quite difficult. I would say the main reason is a lot of people nowadays are probably have more money than they did, but less time. So therefore, it's probably easier for them just to say, you get on and build it. I'll go to work and do what I'm good at and earn money. I think back in the day, everybody kind of built their own car, but it's probably the only car they had for their whole career. People sort of spent time, built their car how they wanted it, and they kept it like forever. I think nowadays it's not. Yeah, over a period of years, that's kind of changed a lot, and now it's. I wouldn't say it's easier. I suppose for them it's easier, but I think it's just the convenience factor of when it needs repairing or when you need parts for it, you can ring that guy, have the parts because they built loads the same, and I think that's more the reason.
Yeah. Okay, that absolutely makes sense. Thank you. So if I was going to go and buy a new road car tomorrow, there's different manufacturers out there and there's different kind of price points. So if you put that back into stock cars, where do you sort of pitch yourself?
I want to probably say that I'm a combination of a lot of them. I'd like to think I had the speed factor of a Ferrari. I'd like to think I had the build quality of a Mercedes, but the price factor of a Ford. But obviously that's not the case. Obviously, I suppose if I had to pinpoint it, I'd probably like to think in the supercar market, if that's what you want to refer a stock car to, I'd like to think I was a Porsche. Still in its day, can live with the best, but also is a very good built car, and obviously at the same time is a damn sight cheaper than what other supercars in its category are.
Okay, brilliant. So is that kind of where you are in terms of, obviously you've got various manufacturers, haven't you, of people building stock cars, and do you kind of think this is my sort of niche and this is what I'm good at?
Well, I think I think it's what I believe in the sport. At the end of the day, it's how I interpret it. I don't believe that you should just go out and buy everything. And you could do that. You could build them a lot faster, and you could build them for a lot more money if you literally just off the shelf, I want this, 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 and this. But that's not really how I believe. I'm more of a labour hands-on, where I try my hardest to make everything for it, which obviously then brings the price down a lot, because I don't have to outlay, but obviously takes me a bit longer to do. But that's just how I interpret stock car, hence why that's how I build stock cars like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's clearly a successful way of doing it, because the number of people that are coming to you for cars to be refurbished and built. So clearly it's one for the drivers as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, whether people would ever admit it or not, I definitely believe that the building Mark Sargent a car and me racing Mark's car, I think it opened a lot of people's eyes that there was no secrets. I didn't build Mark's car worse than my own. I got in Mark's car and did a damn sight better in Mark's car than I'd ever done in my own. So I think for a lot of people, that's clear to see that if you order a car off me, you actually get the same as mine, if not better. And I think for a lot of people, that's a big thing.
Yeah, brilliant. Cheers, Matt. Thank you. So going back to the beginning of your career, you don't live in the traditional heartlands of BriSCA Formula 1 stock car racing. So what brought you into the sport?
Obviously, when I was, like a lot of people, when I was 10, I started racing mini stocks. But obviously, we had ORC minis in my area, because I had Yarmouth, Kings Lynn, Swaffham, Mildenhall, all tracks which are a lot closer to me. Obviously, that's what I did. Obviously, when I was a kid, my dad was a big banger driver, and obviously that was all he ever had any interest in. But later on, bangers changed quite a bit. People were spending a lot of money, and my dad then wanted to get out of that, so he went for the Formula One market. Now, I know this is going to sound really stupid, but my dad wanted me to have a Formula One, so I didn't get involved in something that was going to take over my life. And I know that that's not what happened, but my dad wanted me to have something that I could race once in a blue moon. And probably my dad's exact words were, "You haven't got the money and all the knowledge to compete in, but it's something that you'll just enjoy and you'll do it." And that's why I had one. I didn't want that commitment. When I did a mini stock, it was every single Thursday, Wednesday, Saturday. We used to race during the week. Obviously, Saturday, Sundays. We used to do 2 meetings on a Sunday. It was a big thing for us. And I think my dad didn't want that to come anymore. He wanted something that I could just be like a mediocre person at. Again, I don't know how that went wrong at all. But that is honest truth. The reason that's why I went with a Formula One. I could have raced saloons and done the same as what a lot of my mini stock drivers did and become, very successful in that and put my heart and soul into it. But that's not what my dad wanted. My dad wanted me just to literally go, I'm going to go to Kings Lynn this month and I won't go till Kings Lynn next month. And that's the reason I went down the Formula One route, even though living where I do.
Yeah. So do you ever have the conversation now going, can you remember when? Where's you on the way to Buxton on a Sunday afternoon?
Yeah. Yeah, all the time. Me and my dad do generally. Obviously, we work together, and obviously we do laugh about it all the time. It was just like, how did it get to this? Do you know what I mean? We went from having one car, then we went to just swapping it over from surface, and now look at it. I've got more cars to look after than I know what to do with. So yeah, we do laugh a lot.
So going back to sort of that very beginning, I mean, you first registered in 2001, so you've been now entering your 20th season. Did you ever envisage you would have such a long career in stock cars, or was it kind of, actually I could do this for a bit and then maybe go and do something else? Did you think you'd be here sort of 20 years later with no sign of stopping?
Yeah, for definite. I think people that will obviously know of what we did, me and my dad have been committed to racing, or my dad's been committed to racing ever since he turned 16. And obviously, even when I was a kid and I used to help my dad strip bangers out, and then when I was 10 and had a mini stock, as far as people that come and go, me and my dad, not like that. We from day one have always been committed, and I knew that I would kind of do it forever, but I only expected to do it every now and then. I expected to do 20 years, but maybe only 10 meetings a season, because when we set out, like I say, that was the game plan. But obviously, I don't know how many years I've done probably in succession now and only missed 1 or 2 at the most, so yeah.
So was there a particular turning point when you went, right, we're not just going to do Kings Lynn, we are going to go and do every meeting and push and try and be the best in the sport? Was that like
Um,
a moment, or did it just happen by accident?
no, yeah, it kind of did revolve. When we first started, I only had me and my dad, and obviously some help from some other people, built our first car. I just did a bit of shale and tarmac. Again, didn't do all the meetings hardly at all. And then a lot of people say I felt very fortunate. Obviously, the first one was obviously I become friends with Billy Tom O'Connor. He at the time had two very, very good cars. For me and Billy become friends, and he decided he wasn't going to race anymore. I could have the cars. There was no money exchange hands. If I wanted them, I could have them. So the next thing I know, I've got a shale car. I then get, Billy's tarmac car. Probably at the time wasn't the best, but over a long period we changed it. Then I obviously ended up with a small block for tarmac, a big block for shale, and then probably, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years after that, I was very good friends. I used to go racing with Steve Lewin. He then got to the stage where, he'd called it a day. He wanted to retire. But where a lot of people then would put their cars on the market and sell them, Steve just turned around to me and just said, I'll tell you what, Matt, if you want them, you have them, and just pay me back when you can afford to. So obviously with that, I ended up having 4 cars as such. Yeah. And then obviously I sold one. I paid Steve some money. I kept the better stuff that I wanted to keep. And then I suppose then I was probably in a position then where I had good tackle and I felt like I could race weekend. We never used to bother going to Buxton because I couldn't compete. So we used to stay at home, and I couldn't compete on a lot of the places. So that's a lot changed, I would say, through people like them helping me.
Yeah. And it seems that's kind of how things evolve in stock cars, isn't it? A lot of people help people, and that's how people seem to progress, if you like. It's a common theme, isn't it?
Definitely. That's 100%. I don't care who you are or what you are. You can't do it all on your own. You need people to point you in the right direction, and you need people to kind of help you out, whether it's financially or with knowledge or equipment. You need help along the way. Do you know what I mean? And that's, I've been very lucky in that respect. I've had a lot of people that have probably helped me immensely with things they've given me or let me have or told me. And yeah, that's a definite fact.
Yeah. Cheers, Matt. Thank you for that. So, like I say, you're superstar in the sport. You're coming into your 20th season. It might be quite difficult to answer, but what would you say has been your greatest achievement so far?
If coming second was an achievement, that's definitely it. But no, I would say, for me, this is a personal thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. When I won Novice of the Year, that was a big thing for me because you only get one go at it. I won Grand National Championship and World Masters for me. But I'd always said from day one, the man that wins the overall season-long points is the best man of the year. And when I did it in 2014, that to me was a big thing. But I kick myself now because I kind of threw away the silver roof in doing so. When we came down to the final meeting at Sheffield, I was only about 5 or 6 points behind Rob Speak for the silver roof, but I was only about 2 or 3 points ahead of Tom Harris for the overall points. And I took it upon myself to make sure that I tried to outscore Tom to win, which I did. But obviously in the process, Rob Speak, he went on and won, and he got the silver roof. So now I kind of half kicked myself. What I took as my biggest achievement, I'd have been far better off if I'd have forgot about that and tried my hardest to win the silver. But I didn't. So
yeah, I mean, over sort of the last a decade or so, the shift has been towards the shootout, hasn't it? And being given the silver roof as part of winning that, as opposed to the season-long grading points. Do you feel that shift is right?
For the sport, yes. For a personal point of view, no. But for a sport, it does. We used to see it year on year on. After World Final, people used to lose heart. And then, to be fair, I'm not knocking Frank for what he did, but he used to have the silver roof sewn up by August because of the volume of meetings he was doing at the time, and probably lack of commitment from various other people. Now, don't get me wrong, the sport has also changed a bit in that respect. You've got a lot of people that do all the meetings. Myself, Tom, Frank, there's a lot of people. Nigel Green, when he did it in, I think, 17. To be honest with you, I've looked at the overall season points regularly, and they're nearly as close as the shootout over a long period. But definitely for the sport, the shootout is the right thing. It's entertainment for the crowd. It keeps the spice involved, and yeah, that's definitely the right call.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. You often qualify well in semi-finals, but when it comes to the world final itself, it's not really been a happy hunting ground for you. Why do you think that is?
Um, it's because I want it too bad. That is the honest answer to that. I go out of my way on the first corner to try and win it because I want it so bad.
Yeah,
It's the only time of the year that I get nervous. I don't get nervous for normal races. It comes to world final, and I do it every year. The parade lap, all that stuff, the getting in the car, it drags on and it drags on. And to be fair, I never race my best come the world final, and it's just something that I've not been able to do. The one of the hardest things is I got the opportunity in 2007 when really and truthfully I was a bit of a nobody and I wasn't good enough to win the world final, but I got in a situation that race where I led for majority of the race. I think I was still leading with 5 laps to go, but I didn't have the speed in them days to live with Stuart Smith, Frank, and Andrew Smith. But I was given that opportunity, and I nearly took it. The trouble is now I'm desperate for that opportunity again, but I just never get it. I think I don't know how many years it's been now, and I've crashed out within a few laps. I mean, this year was the same. I felt really confident. I felt like I had as good a chance this year. I went for a big first corner. Frank crashed. Me and Lee Fairhurst got tangled up. Next thing you know, it's like race over. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, definitely trying too hard it's been
yeah.
my problem.
So does that change the way that you race the car throughout the race then? Do you know what I mean? Let's say you don't crash on the first bend and you're racing in the world final. Does your driving style change as a result of being nervous or wanting to win?
I don't think you realise it does, but it does. When I sit in there, I just say, "Oh no, it's not. I was the same." My dad's like, "But you never do that. Like, you were doing things that I never see you do week to week. But when you're in the car, you just think you're doing your normal, what you do every Saturday night in a meeting final. But clearly I don't. So yeah, it obviously does get to me in the respect of because everybody, doesn't matter who you are, everybody always reminds me that I've never won a major championship and I've come so close so many times and it does get to me 100%. And I think that's the reason now that I now struggle to win one. And, Paul Harrison always jokes to me and he always says, "I'll tell you what, Matt, when you do get one, you're going to get loads." He said, as soon as that first one comes, they'll all start coming. Maybe he's right, maybe he's not. But yeah, that's definitely my issue on, trying to win that. I think about it now. I think it was 2010. I was about row 3. I was never as quick as Andy Smith and Frank on the front row. So I did what I thought I had to do, which was try and win it on the first corner. But in that, I crashed myself. And then, this was no different. I wasn't going to outrun Tom. Somebody needed to take Tom out, and there needed to be some action. So I tried to cause some action, but in the process, I crashed myself. And yeah, so that's just how I do it.
And it is really difficult, isn't it? Because, for example, identifying Tom as your main rival to win the world, you don't know what everybody else's game plan is, do you? So it's kind of, well, if I don't do it, is anybody else going to do it? And so that also must impact as well.
Yeah, I don't, to be honest, I don't never go into a race and target one person as they're the only person that can win it because we've seen it many times. 3 or 4 of you get in a battle and one of the other. There's too many people at the top of the sport, to do it. But it was quite knowledgeable this year that if somebody didn't take out Frank or Tom from the front row, they would drive off to the distance. So I was sitting there, I think on row 4, thinking, whoever was on row 2, if you don't take them out, it's not going to be a race. And and then I was thinking, can you rely on them to do it? Probably not. So the best thing you can do is push yourself. Everybody pushed that day, and to be fair, middle of the pack, we all we got took out, and that's sort of. Now I kick myself and think, well, I should have sat back. There was a yellow flag a few laps later. If I'd have been in contention, I'd have been there or thereabouts. But it's too late then, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you for that. You've mentioned it a couple of times already, so let's deal with this now. So How many times a year does somebody make a comment about being famous for second, and how much do you have to fake a smile when people make that joke? Is it becoming a bit old hat now?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I don't blame them for it because it's a true fact, isn't it? The truth is out there. I am Mr. Second Place, but it is frustrating. Yeah. If I had £1 for every time I hear it a season, I'd be absolutely fine to go racing every week. But I don't know. It's just one of them, isn't it? At the end of the day, what can I say? That it's been a hard few years for coming second in major titles as such, and yeah, I suppose one day it's got to change. Is that the only way you can look at it?
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you? But I mean, I think if you could take some solace, I guess, two major last bend incidents that you've been involved in, haven't you? So although you didn't win, actually, you are kind of still famous for, in some respects, for being a great race.
Yeah, I don't care what anyone says. You could never have planned that it was going to happen 2 years in a row. When it happened the first time, what a stock car move from Stewart. At the end of the day, that's what people come for. I'd have done what he did. I'd have probably missed, don't get me wrong, but that is a perfect stock car maneuver. But really, I never thought it was going to happen again. That to me, that was hard to take, if I'm honest with you. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing again. Lee didn't do nothing wrong. If you want to win, it's what you have to do. That's life, but it is, yeah. And I've been second. I was second a few years previous to Paul Harrison in the British. The year before that at Sheffield, I'd won my heats and I was on the front row and it rained. It's just been a bad title to try and win.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fingers crossed. You look, because it is luck, isn't it? A lot of stuff is luck in stock cars. Your luck will change in the coming seasons.
Let's hope so.
And right, so you're a superstar driver in the sport. So, do you feel pressure to do well at every meeting, to perform well at every stock car meeting you attend?
No, definitely not. The only person that puts pressure on me is me. I've had some really bad days. My dad never gets on to me and says, you should have done this, you should have done that. Like, not at all. The team doesn't as a whole. They might be disappointed some days, but they don't never get on to me. I don't feel pressure from the fans. Maybe it's that possibly could be because I've never been what I would call number one. I've always been somewhere or thereabouts, but I've never been top of the tree. So I think for a lot of people, yeah, I do normally do very well at each meeting, but I wouldn't say I'm expected to as a whole. People know that I'll always be in contention as such, but I suppose maybe when you've got one of them championship roofs on your car, that's when people think, oh, well, he's world champion, he should win every week. Do you know what I mean? But I've not had that. And to say the only pressure I have is from myself wanting to win.
Yeah. Okay. Throughout these interviews, when we've spoken to drivers, and there's been sort of a running theme, which is, if I win, brilliant, great. It's like the icing on the cake. But actually, if I've been involved in a great stock car race, that kind of does it for me. Is that similar to how you feel, or do you want to win no matter what?
Yeah. Well, I think any true stock car sort of driver would say they want to win every race. But yes, there's a lot of satisfaction when you might come third, but you had a cracking race. You might have been took out of the start and come back through the field. You might have just been involved in a couple of last lap incidents where it all crashed and you ended up, losing the win. But yeah, I do believe that entertaining the crowd is a big part of stock car racing. So if you're involved in a race that everybody says, oh, wow, what a race that was, it's not as good as winning, but it's a definite part of it. I remember winning the Coventry final when there was obviously the big Dan Johnson, Rob Speak and Frank crash, and I was nowhere in contention, but all of a sudden I've inherited the lead, got the win, and like I say, you feel like you've won a special race.
Absolutely. And how did that look from the driver's cab? Because there were huge incidents, weren't there? And we talked about it with Joe and Dan. It's been like a bit of a running theme this time around. You had a front row seat.
Yeah, that was it. For once, and it don't happen very often, but for once, that just all fell in my favour. I was like a backseat passenger, just go on, boys, you go and do that to each other, and I'm going to just come through. And yeah, for one, normally it's my turn at the front when the hits get a bit harder, and it's me that ends up over the fence. But no, for that it was a cracking race, and it was good to be a part of. But it was probably sweet knowing that was my luck that day, that I came out, as winner.
Yeah. So that is a question for you. So let's say you're in a race and somebody in front of you, you're not involved, but you kind of go underneath to take the places, but someone's going on the fence really hard. Do you ever think, oh, that was a big one? Or do you just like not focused on that and just like, happy days, I've gone through?
Yeah. I remember when I first started, and I remember coming off after the race and actually having trouble, like pulling my roll-off film, taking my hand off the wheel was a difficult. You were focused purely on driving the car. But when you've done it for quite a while, I suppose that becomes just a normal procedure every week. So you have time to look around the track and think about, oh, look at them two crashing, or look at them two doing that. And yeah, I do think about it. One of the worst feelings I have is regularly seeing a big crash and thinking, that's my hire car in that. Do you know what I mean? And the yellow flags come out when it's, who's on the roof? That's one of mine. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, that's something that I probably think about a lot. Who's that rolled over? And that's going to cost me a week's work. So yeah, I do think about them sort of things.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So talking about that, and you mentioned it at the beginning, so has sort of building, maintaining stock cars become almost your full-time occupation now then?
Yeah. I do obviously still have a car garage, as in fixing road cars, but I let a lot of other people do that work for me now, and I kind of just do the ones that I want to do because I can't keep up with stock car racing. Obviously, a lot of years ago, I obviously bought the company off my dad, and my dad started a new company. But now, between the two of us, he'll do stock car all week and I'll do road cars, and then vice versa. I'll be busy on road cars, but he'll be doing stock cars. So probably between the two of us, it is a full-time job all day, every day.
Yeah. Okay. And you've introduced a lot of people into the sport through the hire cars, and it does, like you've said before, it helps fund your racing. But if you could ever go back to just you going to a stock car meeting, would you do that?
Yeah. And obviously I need the money, so it's not as simple as that. But if money was not an object, I'd be a far better person just having my own car. People think I'm joking when I say this, but like, we're going to Kings Lynn in a few weeks, aren't we, for the first meeting of the year. I'm going to race the car that I raced in 2019. It has not been out of the lorry since that day. I will roll it out the day before because I'm so busy doing everyone else's, and I'll just go racing. But it's not good for it. We all understand there's a lot of sort of finicky bits in the car that must be right. And a lot of the time I come home from the meeting and I sort of go, it was all right last week, it'll be all right this week. You get to the meeting, lo and behold, it's not all right this week. I wish I'd spent the time in the garage, but the fact there is, I don't care what anybody says, stock car racing is expensive if you want to run at the top of the sport. And I need that money to do that. So I need to do them hire cars because I need to put 2 tyres on my own car. So I have to do that in that respect. So it'd be no good me just going back to doing my own car if I didn't have the money, because I'd be nowhere. I remember when I first started and I used to go and see Paul Harrison and people like that and basically buy their second-hand tyres off them, and that's what I would use. But when you get at the top of the sport, it's no good buying tyres off somebody else. You need new ones and you need new parts on your car. And yeah, so I suppose I'd like to, Jonathan, that's the answer, but yeah, it's never going to come to that because I could never afford to do it unless I do that.
Yeah, okay, no, that makes sense, thank you. But I guess on the flip side to it, you've talked about Formula Stock Car Racing, and clearly you're a huge supporter of it. Having the hire cars does bring people into the sport, and it helps that growth and maintain, and gives people an insight into what it is like to race a Formula Stock Car.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people respect that that's what I do, for the sport as a whole. Like, a lot of people come into the sport, a lot of people have bought cars once they've had a go. Yes, I end up building a lot of cars and business through them having a go, but as a sports perspective, I bet if I could sit down at the start of the year and think about how many people had got a license through having a go from me buying a car and getting involved, it's definitely good. It's healthy for the sport. I don't care what anyone says. At the end of the day, the more cars, the more people will want to watch. Entertainment factor, it's never no good with 20 cars. you need 60, you need 80, and it will always be better if that happens. So yeah, I think that the more people we can keep getting into the sport, the better it'll be.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Thank you. So speaking of cars, sometimes unintentionally you create one of the biggest talking points at a meeting, and then sort of talking about when you raced the Billy Tom O'Connor car. So my question is, do you like it?
I don't know how to answer that. No, technically I don't. I actually don't like the car at all, but
Okay.
there's something about it that makes me smile all the time. And I think a lot of it is people think it's not very good. And people, I remember Danny Wayman, his exact words were, "I can't believe you just beat me in that." And for me, that was good because it was like, and it's not just him. A lot of people, because of the way it looks, people think, "Oh, look at that ugly thing." If that's what you want to call it, I don't know. But for me, it's not a bad car. It's got everything right. It's got all the bits that it should have. It's just not the prettiest of things. But that's not something that I'm prepared to change, because at the end of the day, if I'm going to change that, I might as well start. I might as well start again and have another one. But there is something about it when you drive it, I suppose, because it's got a very big engine in it. It's very big, and how it is, it's satisfying, I would say, is the answer. And I've had some cracking races, probably in 2020 more than anything, because for me it was just racing. It was nothing at stake. I didn't see the point in wearing up my normal car when I had that. So it was just a case of, I'll tell you what, we're going to race it. The more I race it, the more it gets better and better. And we got a win with it. And I felt at the end of the time it was a fair, decent, car on track. But like I say, it just isn't the most prettiest of things.
No.
That's how it is, isn't it?
But so is it yours now as well? Is it kind of sitting
Yeah.
within your
Yeah.
cars?
Yeah. To be fair, Billy built the car at my yard. Obviously, me and Billy have been friends, like we spoke about earlier, ever since Billy retired from racing a lot of years ago. We've stayed like best friends, and Billy used to come and help me week in, week out on the cars. We had a bit of a period there when I did actually sort Billy a hire car to use. Billy raced it all the time, and then obviously Billy said, "Oh, I'm going to build myself one," and he did. He built it at the yard, so he kind of used my car to measure the bits off. So that's what I mean. Really and truthfully, it's not a million miles different to my car, only the look of it, because that's how he wanted it to look. Billy then decided that he wanted to sell the engine and stuff out of it, which kind of left the car there doing, to be honest with you, not a lot. And I just said to Billy, "Oh, I'll buy it if you want, Billy, and I'll use it." I did use it once then. Exactly how Billy had built it, I just turned up at the first meeting, and then I ran into engine trouble. Basically, it overheated. I didn't bother stopping because at the time at Stoke, I thought I was going to win the race. So I kept going. And then obviously it did engine damage. Then obviously this rolled into Mark Sargent at the time, had hurt his arm. I was going to repair the Billy Tom car the following week, but Mark just said, "Well, I can't race mine." The next thing is I started racing Mark's car for the rest of the 2017 season. Obviously then I didn't use it ever since. Then my dad sort of said, "Well, if we're going to use it again, we ought to just chop some of the bits off, make it a bit easier to work on and a bit more sort of user friendly," I would say is the word. And that's sort of where we are now with it.
Yeah. So it may make an appearance in 2021, depending on,
Yeah. I do plan on, again, I do have a brand new shale car, but I've had it for quite a long time and it's never even graced the track. And to be honest with you, it's going to be no different at the start of the season. But I still have what I class as my normal shale car that I've used for years and years. I let James Morris use it in 2017. Then I got it back off James, obviously, and started using it myself. So I will use that. But like I looked at the fixture list straight away, and there was a Kings Lynn at the first week. Then the following week was a Northampton Saturday and a Bradford Monday. And I just said to my dad, "Well, I'll use the Billy Tom car at Northampton so I don't have to risk damaging my own car for Bradford on the Monday." So it will come out, and that's kind of how it'll stay, I suppose. I wouldn't say, obviously, if the offer's right, I will sell it, but I've got no reason to want to sell it. I should just keep it just to use, when I want to, and like that.
Okay, lovely, thank you. We've talked a little bit around costs, and it is sometimes a question around, are costs in Formula One too expensive? Do you think they are prohibitive in people not entering the sport because of how much they think it's going to cost them?
No, truthfully, I don't. I think if you're into motorsport, any motorsport is expensive. You know, I don't care whether it's a Formula One, a Formula Two, whether it's circuit racing or go karting. Motorsport as a whole is very expensive. There's a lot of things that I sometimes think to myself, that's really not needed in Formula Ones, and we could try and cut the cost. But the trouble you have is people, if they can't spend money in that area, they spend it in another area. And the trouble is, you spend half your life just going around in circles. Well, now you can't do this, then you can do that. And to be honest with you, I think technically where it is now is probably where it's at. I wouldn't say there's anything that I particularly say, well, if you couldn't do that, you wouldn't have. I think generally where it is where it's evolved through a lot of years, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. But I don't believe it's too expensive. I believe that if you went and bought a car for a good bit of money, but if you went and bought a car, you'd be more than competitive in that car. If you can sort of do the work on it yourself, so you didn't have to pay somebody, it's not that expensive really. Most of the stuff you can make rather than buy. Yeah, I think it's all right really.
Okay. And a dual surface car, is that a realistic proposition in 2021, considering where the cars are currently at?
No, it'll never work. It'll never come to that. If they now said you had to do a dual surface car, the man with time on his hands will always be the winner. I remember when I did it for quite a long period. To do it properly, you really want to change like both the axles. You want to have tarmac stuff and shale stuff. You can do it with one car, because I wouldn't say the cars are a million miles apart. What you would probably want to do is have a tarmac car and race on shale. Shale cars don't really handle on tarmac as well, but a lot of modern day shale tracks are very, I would say, close to tarmac. Kings Lynn is as smooth as tarmac, and to be fair, you've seen yourself, some people use their tarmac cars to great success. So if you were going to do it, you would definitely do a tarmac car on shale. But the man, let's say, the man that's got time on his hands will always be the winner. It used to take us like best part of 3 nights to swap the car from shale to tarmac. So therefore, if you got any damage, that was like extra. And then what we started doing, obviously, in them days, is we used to pick and choose meetings. Oh, well, there's 3 shale and 1 tarmac. We'll miss the tarmac and then wait for shale. But that's not good for the sport, is it? You want as many people at every meeting. So yeah, for me, I know Danny does it, and obviously, don't get me wrong, a lot of drivers do it, and I do it with every single hire car that I've got. They do both surfaces. But when you want to, not being rude to anybody, but when you want to run right at the top, that doesn't work like that. You need it. You need to take the front axle off, put a shale front axle on, so your brakes don't do shale and tarmac and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, the man that has got the time to do that will always come out on top over the man that just changes the wheels and off they go.
Yeah. Thanks for the answer to that, Max. I mean, it is that part of the debate you see on the internet around, well, this is what we should do with stock cars, and it'll fix everything. But actually, from what you've described,
I don't believe it. The outlay, and that's a big thing, don't get me wrong, but the outlay of buying 2 cars, once you've got them, it's actually a damn sight cheaper, because your cars only get half the wear and tear. You've got 9 times out of 10, you've got 3 weeks to repair that car, rather than I need it again this Saturday. So therefore the workload's a bit less. And again, your tarmac car is always like immaculate. It's dead easy to look after. And your shale car is always used and abused. And that's how it is. To try and keep one going, you know, I think back to when I did it, and my one engine did 50 meetings in a year. I'm going to be honest with you. You get an engine to do 50 meetings in a season without going wrong, you've done really, really well. Whereas I think if I look at this year, when I was looking at the fixture list, there's like 14 tarmac rounds. My tarmac car has only done half the work. So, but don't get me wrong, it is a big outlay to buy 2. But once you've got them, you're definitely in a better position. So yeah, I don't see it ever changing.
Cheers, Matt. Thank you for that. So because you aren't busy enough, you're also on the BSCDA committee. I could ask you loads of really, really important questions, but one that I want to ask is, so before COVID, when you could attend actual meetings, who did you always sit next to?
To be fair, I don't think I actually had a specific person I used to sit next to. I used to 9 times out of 10 sit next to Paul Hines just because we used to go together. The committee meetings being at Nottingham, Derby, Sheffield, wherever we ended up having them, was a long way for me, regardless of where they were. So what I used to normally do is I used to go to Paul Hines's, and then obviously me and Paul would go to the committee meeting together. So with that, I suppose it was the gist normally was the meeting had started, we turned up, and
Yeah.
we'd just sit together. So that's probably the answer. But I didn't necessarily have a ritual, I must sit here.
Yeah. So when I attend store managers meetings for Sainsbury's, there's always one manager who always tends to get a bit of a ribbon throughout. Who's that at committee meetings?
That's Paul. That's Paul Hines all day long. Yeah, I don't know why, but it just is. Everybody rips Paul about Mr. Glass Bumper, or or actually a lot of the chat is Paul gets quite up and go at the committee meetings, and it's a bit like, bloody hell, Paul, if you had this at a stock car meeting, you'd be well away. But yeah, that I would generally say that is the target of the night.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing. So we've talked about how busy you are. So outside of racing, do you have time for any other hobbies?
No, probably not, to be fair. Any free time I do get, I probably spend like a lot of stock car people, with my family, with my partner, with my obviously daughter. I did get quite into remote control racing. Probably as sad as people think it is, there's a lot of people that do generally do it. I used to take the mick out of my friends that did it every week. I actually used to really rip into them. Was like, what are you doing? It's Friday night. You should be in the workshop with me. And it's like, no, we've got to go remote control racing. I was just like, you boys are sad. Do you know what I mean? And then one day they needed somebody to fill a team meeting they were doing. I had to go and thought, do you know what? This is actually quite good. And then I got quite into it. I used to go probably every Friday night with my daughter. That was like our thing on a Friday night. And then I'd go on probably a Sunday night. It was nighttime things. It was a lot easier for me, around work. And I did quite enjoy it, to be fair. And now when you go there, as much as the clubs down my way obviously didn't mix with the clubs, like when you start talking, there's a lot of Formula One drivers or a lot of teams that do actually do it. And when I was at MWA, obviously show, I actually went there to race remote control cars all day, and the amount of people that I saw there was like, oh, I see you at stock car racing, and it is actually quite a popular thing. So yeah, I suppose that was it, but obviously I haven't done that for over a year with COVID and that. So yeah, I kind of don't have a lot of other hobbies really, only the usual life stuff that people do.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say hypothetically you get into cooking, right? So you go into cooking, you organise a dinner party, and you can invite 3 people that are linked to Formula One stock car racing. Who would you invite?
Well, first of all, I'd obviously invite Mark Sargent, just because he's a clown. We have a laugh. We're probably best of friends as well, so he'd be number one.
Yeah.
My second person would be Chris Cowley, just because, again, we're quite similar age, we're quite similar kind of people, very outgoing. We just generally have the same interests. So that would be 2. Who would be the third? I don't know. It's a lot of people that I'd have. Probably as a third person, touching on what we did a minute ago, I'd probably invite Paul Hines, just to have someone to take the mick out of all night. To be fair, just have somebody there that could take the banter and just take a bit of abuse off me, Chris, and Mark, and yeah, that'd probably be my 3.
Brilliant. So it sounds like a great dinner party and very entertaining.
I won't be cooking. All right, I won't be cooking the dinner party.
Right. So you're talking about Paul Hines. Does he take this banter well?
Yeah, he does, definitely. That shadow of a doubt. He gets a lot of stick, Paul does, but he always takes it really well. Like, if anybody obviously follows the internet, there's always an ongoing sort of comic between him and obviously Mark Sargent. And I haven't been funny. If there's ever somebody you don't want to be getting in a bit of a war of gags with, it is Mark Sargent. But Paul takes it really well. To be fair, he gives as good as he gets, and yeah, he definitely does.
Good. Cheers, Matt. Thank you. So going back to stock cars, do you have a preferred racing surface, and I guess a favourite track, past or present?
Yeah, I'm a shale man. I enjoy tarmac, but it's not as enjoyable. It's very hard to be on like to be on pace is really hard. You can race really hard sometimes on tarmac, and you end up getting ninth. And but there is no better satisfaction than a really good shale track condition, like day wise. When you can really get it wound up, and it's a far better thrill for me. There's always more action. You get a bit more of a, people might be faster, but they get held up, and then it gives you a chance. And I just generally think for a sports perspective, and obviously for a personal point of view, shale is the way. And I suppose then going on to the track wise, it would have to be Kings Lynn. I was a big Coventry man, like everybody was, but that was not through my favourite track as such. That was through my favourite place to be on a Saturday. Do you know what I mean? There was more people there. It was always a lot more going on and busy. And as a whole, Coventry was my favourite venue, but Kings Lynn track wise, and the style of the track, it's very fast, but it's very tight corners, which means that the car in front has got to be on the brakes for a longer period, which gives you more of a chance to attack it. I just think it's the best all-round track to go to. I've probably been more successful at Sheffield as a whole. It's been the sort of track where 9 times out of 10 when I go there, I do very well. But for me, the racing's very boring there just because of the style of track. It's nobody's fault, but it's very hard to get on to someone. And when you do, then it's just a personal preference.
Yeah, Sheffield just seemed to create sort of one racing line that everybody seems to stick to, and I guess once cars get away, it's very difficult to catch them because it is that fast and spread out, isn't it?
It's that thing about Sheffield where the harder you try, the worse you go. If you really get the bit between your teeth and you say, I'm going to have this, you start over driving Sheffield, and it becomes a massive problem, obviously, with the style of the track. Whereas Kings Lynn, and to be fair, Bellevue was the same. If you really got it together and you really said, look, I'm having this, you could make some time up, you could get it right. But Sheffield, it was all about one corner, overdoing it, took you 5 more laps to get back to where you were. And that's why a lot of people you'll see they don't mean to be sat where they are, but they know that if they go for the attack, they'll end up going backwards, and it's not worth it. So that's the downside. You get action at Sheffield because of the style of the fence and the speed, but as a racing perspective, it's really hard to actually reel someone in and deal with them and go.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of shale tracks, obviously Bradford is back in 2021. Are you looking forward to going and racing there?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, the work that Steve and obviously other people have put into it has been phenomenal, and the pictures you see, it's got every potential to be, as good as it looks and as good as it used to be. Obviously, I never raced there. It's obviously before my time, and I only ever went there probably once or twice with my dad, because again, my dad didn't travel all them sort of distance when he had a Formula One. He used to race locally, and we went for world finals and stuff. But yeah, I really generally think it'll be a very fast, and I think it'll be I think it'll be the sort of top edge of the sport again, where everybody wants to go to Bradford, and it'll be good car numbers and good action. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, to be fair.
Good, thank you. You mentioned about you don't really get nervous before you race, apart from sort of the world finals. But do you have any pre-race rituals or superstitions?
No, none at all. None at all, really. Maybe that's where I go wrong, isn't it? Maybe I should, but as a whole, no. I never get time at a stock car meeting to have a ritual. People always comment on heat ones going out, and I'll still be getting in my car when they're going out. And, Sophie will tell you I'm never at driver's briefing on time. Do you know what I mean? And that, the scrutineer will come and see me and say, Matt, you've been here 3 hours. You still haven't scrutineered your car. And it's just like, no, but I've done everyone else's. So, that I don't really have a ritual or a thing. But on the nervous front, it's definitely the world final build-up that does that to me. It's not the race as such. And I think if you had that build-up at every meeting, it'd probably be the same. But it's that, get your car, you put it into parc fermé, you then get it back later on, and my dad drives it round on the lap, and it's like that takes forever, doesn't it? One car at a time, and you're standing there, and the crowd are rightly so are going for it, and I remember the Coventry World Final when I was on the front row, and I was like one of the last to come out, and it was like, it was like forever as such waiting. And yeah, that is a lot of the trouble,
Yeah.
for me, that is.
But that's understandable, though. I mean, I've seen God knows how many world finals, and even when you sat there and they're about to go, I get like a bit butterflies and a bit nervous
Yeah,
because it's just the biggest race, and so as a driver in it with a chance of actually winning the race, it just must be the extremity of that.
yeah, that's definitely right. And to be fair, that is why we do it, isn't it? We do it for the buzz and the thrill of of winning. So getting nervous is it? I obviously years ago I would have got nervous for any race because you get nervous about driving that size of a car and and all that. But obviously through like you said earlier, 20 years or whatever, that kind of just goes out the window a bit. I still enjoy it as much as I did, but it's the same thing that went on last week. I'm not nervous of getting hurt. I've been there. I've done that, and it'll be okay. And them things never cross my mind. It's my biggest issue now, and obviously everybody knows it is. I want it so bad that I add pressure on myself to try and do it. For that reason.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Thank you. Right, so I'm going to word this next one very carefully. So you're very good at anticipating the green flag. So how cross were you when they introduced race evers? So you've got my dad in your ear telling you when you can go.
The real answer to that is it doesn't make any difference because I go when I'm ready, not when your dad tells me to go. The race receivers they're a very good thing. You'll be amazed how many times that I hear your dad say stop, but I would have never stopped any other time. Again, getting the green flag into it. I don't care whether your dad says go or not. If I'm ready to go, I go. Do you know what I mean? That's just how it is. It's no good waiting. Listen, people that have been in the superstars will quite straightforward tell you if you wait, you'll be last. It doesn't work like that. Do you know what I mean? It's how it is. The biggest trouble I've got is I've made a rod for my own back through my younger days of I was always so quick to go at the start. Now everybody just knows me for that. Even when I don't jump the start, people watch and assume that I'm going to because I've done it, obviously before so many times.
Yeah, it does answer that, absolutely. But then when John Lund was in the superstar grade, you must have had a heart-sinking moment if you were lined up behind him because he never goes. He's just...
Actually, the worst thing you can ever have is John Lund at the back of the Reds because I want to overtake him before we've even started going. It's like, come on, John, let's get going, and you just see him just putting his goggles back on, pulling his belt. And I think, John, the whites are nearly behind us. We need to get going. But clearly his method is better than mine because he's won a lot more races and world finals than I've ever done. So maybe I need to take a leaf out of his book and just settle down. It'll all come together later on.
Yeah, maybe it's a lesson there, absolutely. So I guess if you had to pick out your biggest frustration with stock cars, what would it be?
Well, if you're talking about racing moments, then obviously clearly it's the British, the amount of times. As a sports whole, my biggest frustration with the sport is trying to push it forward. Obviously, being on a committee, the biggest thing I want to do is push the sport, further forward. But it's very hard because there's a lot of negative fans out there. I don't know why that is. I read on the internet all the time. If there's something positive put out there, trust me, there'll be one of them fans that turns that into a negative. And that's really frustrating because it's like, come on, we're all trying so hard to, make the sport better is what I would call it. But there's so many other people that are there to knock it down again, and I don't know why that is. Whether it's a modern day thing of having the internet, probably didn't do that years ago because they had no form of being able to do it. But I suppose the classic one that frustrates me is the whole where's the booking in list, and it's like, does it really matter? Like but people do get into that, and that's probably my biggest thing is the negativity about something that I still see as being so good. I've spoken about it many times to people. People always say, "Oh, the sport's on a downer." It's not. The sport's as good now as it's ever been. Just because people have been and gone or tracks have gone, but we're still making it as good as we can. And I don't know why people are like that.
No, I think certainly from doing these interviews, every driver that I've spoken to is hugely positive about stock car racing, and you do kind of see that there is this huge amount of positivity out there. It just needs to channel it, and the
Yeah,
sport can be great.
yeah, definitely. I know I'm biased, but the sport's got far better things going for it than the majority of other sports that, and even motorsports, which are far more successful than BriSCA Formula One. Again, people will disagree to me. I cannot watch normal Formula Ones on TV. It absolutely just it does my head in. I actually really despise it. To be fair, I won't put it on. But obviously, it's probably the biggest motorsport there is going. But for me, it's got nothing on a BriSCA Formula. Obviously, I know I'm biased in that, but that's just my
No.
opinion. Even a lot of the things that are a lot more publicised more than Formula Ones, but I don't see that they've got that that word, but
Yeah,
they
I do get it. I think, obviously very good friends with Roger, and, I've been to Radicals meetings at the circuits with him, and yeah, I appreciate what they do, but it's just, as a spectacle, it just doesn't do anything for me at all. It's like just some
no
cars going past, and it's like, I don't get it. But and I
no
suppose you can find the same to stock cars. I don't get cars going around in a circle, but to us, it's just the best thing in the world, isn't it? So
yeah, definitely, and I know a lot of people that say exactly what you just said. Well, I can't even tell who's winning. They're all damn. But obviously, when you've been in it a while, you can read it, and you end up knowing. And uh, a lot of this touches on what you said earlier about like cost of Formula One. I'm very friendly with a guy who's just come out of like whatever you would call the mini GT series round Snetterton or wherever they are, and the prices they spend. And then when you talk to them, they're like, yeah, well, we do a 10-lap race. We wait for probably 4 or 5 hours whilst touring cars and stuff like that go on. And then we go and do another 10-lap race. And that's our day gone, spent 10 grand or whatever. And that's all they got. So you think, well, actually, as a whole, stock car racing's better than that. You get 4 races. It's over in, for about, I don't know. To me, again, it's got a lot more going for it and a lot damn sight cheaper than what a lot of people spend doing them forms of
yeah.
racing.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Many of the drivers I've spoken to during these interviews have said that they owe somebody or somebody owes them. Do you have a similar sort of list going on?
Yeah, definitely. I think you always know who you owe, and I do. I owe quite a few, to be fair. But on the same note, you're not going to find out who because anyone will tell you that if you try and put someone away when they know it's coming, it's very, very difficult. The best way to get someone is when they least expect it. So, yeah, I definitely do. And there's significant moments in my career where I would probably say I should have won something,
Yeah.
but I didn't because of somebody else. Rightly so, they were doing it the same. So, yeah, I definitely have an owed list, but like I say, it's no good me telling you because then they'll be expecting it at the start of the year and they'll be on the brakes waiting for it to happen.
I've just deleted that question. It's just gone.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But that is fundamentally what fans go for, isn't it? They see a bit of rivalry and the kind of, well, somebody did that to Mat Newson last week, so he's potentially going to get him back, and that just builds that anticipation, doesn't it? And we need to capitalise on that as a sport, don't we?
Yeah, as a whole, we actually need more of it. Um, the hardest thing, and it's not something that I want to be in control of, but somebody has got to be able to like toe the line, and they've got to know where hard racing sort
Yeah.
of doesn't overstep the mark. Obviously, I'm quite probably like a lot of people. I'm a big NASCAR fan. I see their fans fighting in the pits. I see their drivers getting out and fighting, and I watch it like and think it's amazing. I'm not saying Formula One should we should be fighting in the pits, but
No.
like what you're saying is rivalry and on track. The Dan Johnson, Tom Harris thing, and the dancing at each other, and the rivalry between two drivers. Your Andy Smith and your Frank and your Rob Speak. That is what people go for, and
Yeah.
you do need more of that. But like I say, it becomes. I've been around long enough now to kind of see them all come and go, and they always end a bit over the top, and it's very difficult to keep them. We all want them battles, and we need them battles, and we need a lot more. But at the same time, we've got to try and keep it
Yeah.
within, I'm the first person. I've done many things that I shouldn't have done, and I've got wrong for it. And other people have done things they shouldn't have done, and it happens. I say I just don't want to be the man in charge that says you shouldn't have done that or that was okay. That's the hardest thing.
Yeah, that's my dad's job, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, he doesn't do a very good job of that either. To be fair, Jonathan.
He doesn't watch these as well, Matt. It's fine. It's
No,
fine.
that's fine. To be fair, I would tell him as well. That's fine, not a problem.
So looking ahead to 2021, hopefully we'll see some great battles on track like we've alluded to. But what are your plans? So I guess you sort of mentioned a little bit about your cars and, so what are your plans there and also for championships and so on and so forth?
To be fair, I'll just do what I do every year, which is I'll set out at the start of the year with all the best intentions. I'll go for everything. I need a title, don't I? Let's be honest. I need one. If not, it's going to be the same year as last year. But I suppose, yeah, I'm well behind with my own cars, to be fair. I should have 2 new cars out, but I'm not going to be fair, until maybe later on. So I just need to keep doing that and keep business going and hope that obviously at the same time my racing goes well. Obviously, I want to win all races and all championships, but technically I have my sights set on. I want to win the silver. I don't know why. That's just something that I feel that it's something that I feel that I should have had by now. Like I say, the year that I didn't sort of contend with Rob Speak from the last day, I think 2000, I think it was 18. I made a right hash of trying to win it against Frank, and I didn't do it. I think, and before that, it's something that I've let myself down a bit, and it's time that even last year you could say I won the meeting final at Bellevue, and I put myself in contention where if I'd got a good Grand National position, I believe I would have won. But I crashed. I got a puncture. It didn't happen. That's just one of them. So I feel that's where I wanna. That's where I wanna be. I want to be world champion as well, like everybody does. But I think, truth be known, if I could now have a go at one, I would generally say that's my aim.
The shootout is a fantastic series, because talking about the one where you nearly won it at Bellevue, you were kind of almost not in contention, were you, at one point? And then you kind of a couple of good meetings, and then you're back up there. I personally find it such an exciting series.
Yeah, and that's why for the sport that's the title to have. The season long would never be as, I would say, entertained as that. It doesn't work like that. So yeah, as a rule of thumb, the shootout is the one that fans go to see. That shootout finale at Bellevue, I like you talked about earlier. I remember seeing Tom and Frank knocking 7 bells out of each other. I wasn't in contention to start with, so everyone left me alone.
Yeah.
I went on and won my heat, and then I won the final. And then everyone's going, "Oh, well, your points are double for the last meeting. If you get a position, Matt, you're going to do it." And I'm thinking, well, that's fine. Obviously, I didn't, and I think Tom went on and won the race. And then obviously, job done. But that's something that I let myself down in 18 when there was only really me, Frank, and Danny in contention for winning. The week before at Stoke, I basically got a no score through car failure and crashing, and really and truthfully, I went for a big hit on Frank, which kind of worked. And then under yellows, the start of the restart, Frank took me out. His bumper went through the side of my engine. I couldn't race no more. I was disappointed that day. That was probably my best chance to win, to be fair.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fingers crossed that 2021 is a bit more with the shootout. So, going into the new season, who are your top 3 drivers in the sport at the moment, would you say?
Truthfully, you can't narrow it down to 3. Everyone will agree that Tom's at the top of his game at the moment, and he is, rightly so. But Frank's been around long enough now that he actually understands what you have to do to be a champion. So therefore, you can never rule him out. I would definitely say that when his mind's in it and he wants to do it, Nigel Green's probably the hardest man to beat. But obviously, Nigel has other commitments, not just stock car racing, which is perfectly fine. So if Nigel's going to come back this year and say, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to have a right serious stab at it," he will be the same. But at the same time, Dan Johnson's as good as anybody. Craig Finnegan's as good as anybody. Lee Fairhurst, he does it. You can't just say there is only 3 to choose from, because when you think about them 3 others will beat you. So it doesn't work like that.
We spoke about this at Motorsport last year, isn't it? And you've kind of alluded to it already, that you can't just focus on one top driver because, you know, brilliantly, there is so many in the sport at this current time, and you can just keep adding to that list, can't you? It's almost never ending.
Yeah, when you sit on a final grid and you look down, you know, like you sit there waiting for the race to start and you have a look through the grades, there's a lot of people. I think, oh, on his day, he's going to win, and he's half a lap ahead of me. And if he gets himself going, he's going to win. And the sport, for definite, it has got a lot more top end drivers than it's ever had. I suppose at committee meetings, we speak to Peter Folding quite a lot. And Peter rightly says, back in obviously his era, there was only 3 or 4 people to kind of beat. A lot of the other drivers with the equipment they had, they used to kind of beat themselves a lot of the time. Peter said if you were still going at the end, you'd get a position. And you know, you look now, it is generally, there is so many people that on their day can win, and that's got to be healthy, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it has. So my final question for you, Matt, what's the best thing about Formula One stock car racing?
The same as everybody says, the people, the people you meet. You know, I met Mark Sargent through obviously stock car racing, and I generally believe now, like, he's now like a best friend to me through stock car scene. The fans that come up to you and, you know, ask for your autographs and things like that, you know, that's a big part of the sport. People that you would definitely never meet if it wasn't for stock car racing. So yeah, that's the best. Even the other drivers, obviously everyone's got people that they get on with, don't get on with, but people that you're friendly with and you go to a meeting on a Saturday to socialize with them people, that's still the best thing about it. You know, I won't see them people only at a stock car meeting. So that, you know, that's definitely the best element for me.
Brilliant. Cheers, Matt. Matt, it's been brilliant to talk to you tonight. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything you'd like to add before we go?
No, just thank you for everything you do, and let's hope 2021 we can actually have a full season and try and make it good for the fans and give them something to talk about.
Yeah, it's not long away. I mean, what are we? Beginning of April, so we've got
Don't remind me. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. Right? To be fair, Boris could do me a favour and just give me a few extra weeks. I'd be much appreciated.
Don't say that. Don't say that. Matt, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you at the first Kings Lynn in May in your a random car that you find in your yard. I'll see you there.
You'll recognise it. It'll be a regular one.
Cheers, Matt. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
So there you have it, a fantastic interview with Mat Newson. Tune back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock for the first of the car reveals.